Yeah, it is not on.
Is that?
কিন্তু ইয়ে তো এখনো পোস্ট করেনি মনে হয়। Someone has to post it.
কেন দেখাচ্ছে স্ট্রিমিং লাইভ? It's working. You can start.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Arshad Hussain Mamun, and I welcome all of you to our third GOTV event. Mahmoud Hassan, Nasiba Mannan, and I will moderate this session jointly on behalf of Bangladeshi Americans for Biden-Harris on Facebook. This is a new platform, but it is a national platform striving to bring our fellow community members from across the country with a common purpose. Elect Biden-Harris and progressive Democrats nationwide. We promote volunteering, voter registration, get out of the vote effort, and of course, we are raising funds for political campaigns, including some campaign where our fellow Bangladeshi American candidates are seeking elected public office in this election cycle. Let me introduce you our guest tonight. Our guest tonight is a proud Bangladeshi American, a passionate progressive political activist, and an absolute inspiration for our next generation of Bangladeshi Americans, Nabilah Islam. Welcome, Nabilah Islam.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you for joining us tonight. We are proud of you. Nabilah was born in Georgia. She earned her bachelor's from Georgia State University. She was a contestant in Democratic primary for Congresswoman representing the Georgia 7 Congressional District. Although she came a little bit short this time, but she ran a spirited campaign that drew significant attention in political landscape. And we have no doubt that she has a very bright future in politics. She was endorsed by liberal powerhouses like Courage to Change PAC of Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, Representative Rokhanna, Representative Ilhan Omar, and 350 Climate Action. She is also founder of a progressive organization called the Progressive List. So viewers who are watching tonight live, thank you for joining us. It is going to be an exciting evening. Please stay with us and post your questions and comments as the event progresses. So let's begin. Hello, Nasiba. Please take it away.
Thank you. Hi, Nabilah. Thank you for joining us. You have a very inspiring life story to tell. You also mentioned how motivating your mom has been in this journey. Can you please share your story with us?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks so much for inviting me again to here to speak to you. And I am so inspired that our community is organizing to elect Vice President Biden and Kamala Harris to become the next president of the United States of America. So it's important work, and thank you for doing it. I myself was very motivated to run for office because of my mother's story. My mom is from Gram, from a village in Noakhali, Bangladesh. She grew up in a tin hut, mud floor home, no electricity, no running water. And, she came to this country and she worked hard. She's still an hourly worker today. My father worked hard too. So it was watching my parents work hard, like, well, their koshtota dekhte, mane inspired me to want to give back to the community that made me who I am today. So, I am the first college graduate in my family. I went to Georgia State University, and I was very inspired to, help people because I think that's so important to do, is to give back and, grow the next generation and also help working people, help families that are struggling, to give a voice to our community and other marginalized communities. And so my mom, when I first got into politics, she was very concerned why I wasn't a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer, but she soon became very proud of me. And so she was very excited when I ran.
Oh, that is an amazing story. And just to piggyback on that, we as a community usually don't encourage our kids to go into public service. Let's imagine little girl, a Bangladeshi American girl watching you right now, feeling inspired and thinking of going into public service. But maybe her parents want her to be a doctor, an engineer. What do you tell that little girl or her parents?
So listen, when I was a little girl, my mom told me I had to become a doctor. And you want to live a happy life that is meaningful and full of purpose, you should do what is best for you. And don't worry, you might think your parents are going to be disappointed in you forever, but when they see how happy you are, when they see that you are living with purpose and how many people you are helping, you will bring them along with their journey. Because sometimes our parents haven't ever seen folks like us in spaces of leadership. And so we have to grow that within ourselves in our communities. And it's something that we desperately need, because I say this all the time, but when we are literally not at the table with decision-making power, the folks that are at the table will continue to put us on the menu. And it's so important to have, voices of every community, of the Bangladeshi community at the table.
Yes, no, absolutely. Very good point. Mahmoud Hassan. Mahmoud Bhai, you're on mute.
Hi, Nabilah. Good evening from your neighboring state of North Carolina.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And thanks for joining us. My name is Mahmoud. I'm sure many young Bangladeshi Americans can relate to you and your family's story. I'd like to know what inspired you to engage in progressive political activism, and why progressive, number one, and what motivated you to become a congressional candidate in the Georgia 7 Democratic primary?
Well, very much like you, Mr. Hassan, I grew up you're now a bluer state, but we are still very Republican dominated in Georgia. Becoming more purple, we have a chance to flip this year. But it was very difficult growing up here, because for half of my life, we've had very conservative leadership, and I didn't see us have more democratic representation. Where I live in Gwinnett County, it's the fourth most diverse county in the entire country. Yet for most of my life, I'm turning 31 in a couple of years, so it's a very long time. It was predominantly white and predominantly Republican, despite how diverse we were. And it frustrated me that we didn't have more representation, which is why I've been working in politics for the last 10 years. I've worked on campaigns for Atlanta City Council, gubernatorial, where I worked for Jimmy Carter's grandson, Jason Carter, when he ran for governor. I worked for Hillary Clinton's last presidential campaign. But I'm very passionate about the progressive movement, because these are the policies that our communities need in order to be uplifted when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to our wages, when it comes to the environment, because we are seeing the scale of an action right now where we have millions of people without healthcare during a pandemic. You can see in California and Oregon, the sky is orange right now. We need radical change, because radical problems, extreme problems are occurring in our society today. And it was just one of the reasons why I ran. It's a two-part answer. Again, going back to representation, I believe diverse communities like mine deserve to have reflective representation of our diversity and our values. And so we are a working class community. We are a diverse community. And, who's going to speak more truths to power than someone that is one of your own, that also has suffered with you and felt your pain and has watched every day to day, what it's like to live in your shoes. And I wanted to do that for my district. However, I was not successful, but I'm very proud of the campaign I ran. And even though I know many people in my district were very inspired, but also across the country saw, how I led, and I chose to be very unapologetically progressive and talk about the issues from my heart. And I think that resonated with a lot of people.
Thank you.
So, Nabilah, this is fascinating, the way you turned your, life experiences into a bold action, and chose to run for office by yourself. So I know you ran on issues like healthcare, like student loan debt, social racial justice, shared economic prosperity, and climate change, but you also know that in our Bangladeshi American community or Asian community in general, less than half of our people vote. So for our next generation of Bangladeshi Americans, would you please explain why these issues or how these issues impact their lives? And what do you say to young people who want to engage in active political process?
That's a great question. I became very politicized because my dad always read the Tikana, okay? And he went to the BNP meetings. My uncle is the Amal League president in Georgia. So it was constantly, I was going to all these little meetings when I was a little kid. I went to, the Fobanas. And I knew more about Bangladeshi politics growing up than I did the politics in Georgia or the United States in general. But I think right now we are seeing a dramatic shift. My state senator where I live, his name is State Senator Sheikh Rahman. He's the first Bangladeshi American and the first Muslim to ever be elected to the state legislature. And it's so inspiring to see that, my parents' generation being elected to office and taking the lead. They have done so much to give my generation a better life, to actually pursue things like running for office. I think it's so important that we vote because our lives are here. Our lives, the policies such as that affect healthcare, that affect wage prosperity, so your wages, student loan debt, the environment, as I mentioned. These are all issues that are affecting us today here on a day-to-day basis. And as for young people to get involved, we need you. I mean, this doesn't, our community will continue to thrive if the younger generation gets more involved and starts to organize the Bangladeshi community. One of the things that I will share that I found so inspiring is growing up in Georgia. I have my own Bengali community, but there's so many pockets all over the country of different Bangladeshi communities. And the one I was so motivated by was the one in New York. They have an incredibly organized, passionate group of people. Well, they have more Bengali, so that helps. But and they're young, and it's also, the uncles and the aunts that are involved as well. We need to be a part of this, because if we don't, we're going to get left behind. And I know how passionate we are about politics in Bangladesh. And once we get into this space of getting involved in our local communities, we will be such a force of nature, because we will bring such passion and heart to how we want to lead and solve our problems today.
If I ask a follow-up question, since you mentioned, the Senator Sheikh Rahman, who was also here a couple of weeks ago, so I was interested to know, the Bangladeshi population in Georgia is not more than, what we have in Florida or New York or Michigan. What is so special about your state that it seems like a breeding ground for Bangladeshi young politicians?
I think it's, Gwinnett is a very special place, and is near and dear to my heart. It made me who I am today. It is very different from the rest of Georgia. It's like I mentioned, one of the most diverse counties in the entire country. Someone actually compared it to a borough in New York. It's very, everyone lives side by side. Lots of different ethnicities and different communities. It's a working class district. It's where a lot of people come to achieve the American dream. And I think that it's communities like ours that are going to elect people like me and Sheikh. My state Senate district, the one that Sheikh Rahman represents, is the third most diverse state Senate seat in the country. So I think when you have people look at me and Sheikh Rahman and think, I see my life story. They don't have to be Bengali, but they see their immigrant, their first generation life story in us. And so, and I think there's something special about Bengali people too. We're hardworking, we're very passionate, we're loud, and we get things done. So I think a combination of being Bengali and then also, growing up where I live has led to more diverse candidates running for office.
Thank you.
I feel very encouraged listening to you. Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about the progressive list. You founded the organization. So if you can give us some insight about the organization, what it does, how you operate, what are your goals?
Sure. So the Progressive List is an organization where we are going to help progressive candidates in the beginning. So just to give you an idea of what it is basically when I ran for office, people already assumed I was dead in the water. I had no chance. I was a young 29-year-old, no healthcare, student loans I had to put into forbearance. My name is Nabilah Islam. And so they already think, long shot candidate. But you know what? I became, to my surprise, I went a little viral at the end where everyone was so excited and really rooting for me. But what people don't realize is that, in order to run a campaign, right, especially for Congress, you need resources. And you need resources at the right time, because it doesn't matter if you raise a whole bunch of money. It matters when you raise that money, because you want to be able to spend it before people start voting. So the Progressive List is to help candidates like myself, diverse, progressive candidates that look like their communities and reflect their values, to be able to have resources in the very beginning. So we will be giving them money. We're going to be helping them with staff support, because a lot of people don't know what it's like to run for office. You need a good campaign manager. You need a good finance director. I'll teach you how to pick up the phone and call for money. I made over 100,000 calls and asked random people for money, and they gave it to me. And so I raised over $750,000 from 10,000 individuals. And so it's incredibly hard, but I want to be there for people in the beginning so that they have a helping hand. Because for me, it took a while before my campaign started to accelerate, and then I got the endorsements and the organizations came in. But you know what? I think it's important that we make people early front runners instead of expecting them to catch fire, become front runners at the very end.
Mm-hmm. And for the next upcoming election, are you working with any specific campaigns?
You mean right now?
Mm-hmm.
So I am, so the Progressive List actually endorsed a few candidates just a couple of weeks ago. One of our candidates, Senator Ed Markey, won his re-election in Massachusetts, progressive champion. And we are working on another slate of endorsements coming up for folks that are running in Republican districts, but are trying to flip them blue. And so there are several progressives across the country that need that extra push to help them cross the finish line. So we're excited to help folks this cycle, and the next cycle, we're gonna be recruiting candidates up and down the ballot all over the country to run for office.
Oh, that is wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, hi Nabilah. I have another serious question. So we are hearing a lot about the United States Postal Service and what's going on around the country. So I have a question about the voting process, access to absentee or mail-in ballot, and voter suppression in general. These are the techniques the current government is adopting to reduce voter turnout, and they're openly pushing this kind of activity in the middle of a pandemic. What would you tell our Bangladeshi American community to watch for so that they are not denied their constitutional rights for voting?
Absolutely. Look, the Trump administration knows that this is going to be a tough election for them because they've been a complete disaster overall, and especially during this pandemic. 190,000 people have lost their lives, and they are now, resorting to voter suppression, because when your policies can't win, you have to cheat. And so right now, what I would encourage the Bangladeshi community to do is vote by mail. Go to your Secretary of State website. You can Google it, vote by mail, your state, and find out how you can request a form. And make sure you fill that form out so you can get a ballot. You can vote from home and send that in as soon as possible. And if you would like, you can also vote in person. So if you don't want to vote by mail because it's something that's it's a process, you can go early vote. Make sure you wear a mask. Make sure you bring all the things that they'll need from you. Usually, a lot of states will require an ID. Bring that with you and go vote in person, so you know that your vote is being counted. Show up on election day. If you feel like someone denies you your right to vote when you go to the ballot box, there will be your voter protection hotline. You can go online and look at, Google that, and you'll find the hotline where you can give them a call and tell them your situation. They'll be able to resolve it. But if you're registered to vote, you should be able to vote. Don't let anyone deny your constitutional right to vote. That is a sacred right, and you should be able to vote. And I would also check your registration status. A lot of states, including in the South, are purging voters from the voter rolls. So I know it sounds like a lot of work, but if our votes didn't have so much value, they wouldn't work so hard to take them away. So make sure you go online, make sure you're registered, everything looks clean, and then vote by mail or vote on election day or early vote.
Thank you. So as a follow-up, you mentioned purging votes, voter registrations. So if I'm a regular voter and I have no criminal records or something like that, should I be concerned about purging or anything like that? I mean, how are they doing it?
So they are belligerently deleting people, thinking they're trying to get away with it. So in Georgia, the ACLU, so earlier this year, they purged over 200,000 people from the voter rolls. And we fought them. We got about 20,000 people back. The ACLU just did a study on the people that were purged. 63% of the people that were purged were incorrectly purged. So what they're doing is they are sending you a postcard, and if you don't mail it back, then they expect that you're dead or that you moved from your house. Sometimes people don't check their mail. Sometimes the postcard doesn't even arrive. So they're using all of these malicious tactics to take our right to vote away, and Black and brown people are disproportionately being affected by this because historically Black and brown people tend to vote Democratic. So they go after communities or names that sound foreign, and will hyper target those folks to purge them off the voter roll.
So basically, it's more prevalent in Republican controlled counties or states, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Absolutely. 100%.
All right, I have a follow-up question. So while we are in the topic of voting, this election is probably the most consequential election of our lifetimes, no doubt about it. But as you know, Asian Americans, including our community, have a strong, has a history of voting, rate less than 50% or somewhere around that rate. What would you say to folks in your community who don't vote usually, why it's so important this time, and why they should vote Biden-Harris and the Democratic candidate down the ballot?
Voting is so important. You should vote every single election. And it disheartens me that our community's voting record is under 50%. It should be at 100%. I think that this is the most important election of our lifetime, because with Donald Trump in office, he has done so many horrible things that it has affected our community, from immigration, whether it's a Muslim travel ban, and whether it's also the economy, and how, look at all these jobs that we've lost during the pandemic. Over 190,000 people have lost their lives. He's threatening to gut the Affordable Care Act. So many people rely on that. And our healthcare, our living, our jobs are depending on, getting him out of office will make our country a better place, because I know that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will bring an agenda that will revitalize the economy, that will actually take this pandemic seriously, instead of Donald Trump calling it a hoax. I don't know if you saw, the Woodward reporter said that Donald Trump back in February knew how deadly this virus was, but played it off when he was talking to the leadership in the country. So we need real leadership at the wheel, or else we're going to continue to suffer and see so much more job losses. I wish I could, in this one Zoom call, talk about all the things that Donald Trump has affected at a disadvantage for our communities. But let's just talk about healthcare, jobs, housing. So many people are about to lose, are about to be evicted from their housing because they don't have jobs, they don't have unemployment benefits. environments. A lot of people are breathing dirty air. We don't have clean water in certain parts of our community. Flint, Michigan doesn't still have clean water. So it's very important that we change this leadership, we get Donald Trump out, and then we elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, because they will put a reset on this country and work to get us in.
Thank you.
Question,
Sound.
Yeah. Do you have any follow-up question?
No.
Okay, thank you. I noticed that you mentioned a couple of times during your campaign that part of the reason people from community like minorities or migrant community, they don't vote because they don't see themselves in the candidate. And I wanted to get a little bit more perspective from you on this, because if you look at the population, right, there is only 6% of the entire population is Asian American, let alone Bangladeshi American would be much less. So do you think for people like us, whether they're voter or the candidate, is it effective for like identity politics based on race, ethnicity, or religion? Or do you think candidates from our community, we should embrace mainstream politics across demographics and then influence people through public policies that work for all of us?
So I believe that we should always vote for a candidate based on the policies that they're advocating for. What are the kitchen table issues that they're talking about, and what are the policies that they're actually going to advocate for that are going to help your community, help your family, help your children. That's very important to me. But I will also say that people, when they go to vote, a lot of people look at the candidate. How do I relate to them? And it helps if that candidate is your neighbor, grew up where you did, looks like you. And a lot of people have mistrust when it comes to politics. They're not motivated. And for when I was running for office, I was so surprised of all the Bangladeshis all over the country and the world. I was getting like messages from all over the world of people just being so excited that I was running for office and making some noise. I think it's very important to be inspired by your candidate and what they're running for, right? Because for a lot of people, they vote because they want to vote for something, right? So whether it's policy, whether it's, hey, your story is my story. And it's great when those two things can just mix. And if you find a candidate who is progressive, who also looks like you. And I think, but overall though, you should always vote for a candidate. I think policy transcends identity, but identity also is something so innate. And it's such a emotional connection to a candidate. And for a lot of people, that's a very central issue to them is, do you relate to me? Do you see me?
I understand now your perspective. Nasiba, go ahead, please.
Thank you. My name is Nabilah Islam, and it is an American name. That is one powerful statement. Can you explain to us what you mean by that?
Yes. Well, to reiterate, my name is Nabilah Islam, and it is an American name. All of our names are an American name. Sometimes, growing up in this country, you will have people that will try to make you feel like you are an other, that you don't belong. But we do. We are just as American as, John Smith is. And it is, our country is a diverse fabric, and that's what makes America great. When I was running for office, a lot of people told me like, hey, Nabilah, you're not electable. If she wants to run for office, she should change her last name to something else. How do you tell that to someone? You need to change your identity in order to fit in. And I said, no, my name, I doubled down. It's like, my name is an American name, because it was so important, not just for myself, but I knew that so many other people were watching my candidacy. That was important for me to be authentic to who I was, because I would rather win with who I am, than rather than be someone I'm not. So I think it's such an important, crucial a thing that, in any profession, that we should always lead with authenticity, and speak truth to power, and be bold. Don't let people, push you in a corner or bully you. You have every right to have a seat at the table, to run for office. You are worthy, and, if you don't get it the first time, keep trying. And, I believe in all of us that we are capable of so much.
Absolutely, good point. Thank you.
Turn from me. Yeah, yeah. I really admire your spirit on the last question. I mean, the way you answered it. Anyway, let's move on to the next question. It's a different kind of question. Have you ever been to Bangladesh? What do you think about Bangladesh and the progress Bangladesh made in the last decade or two? Do you follow Bangladeshi politics? Or in another way, should we as Bangladeshi diaspora concern ourselves with Bangladeshi politics? What's your take on this?
So I've been to Bangladesh. One of the reasons I'm so political is because my mother took me to Bangladesh when I was 5 and 7. And again, my mom took me to Gram, which was like a village. And the concept of what the world was, it was for such a young child. It was a lot to take in. You know, I remember thinking to myself, where is the AC? Where is the running water? Where do I get a glass of cold milk? You know, why does everyone's clothes have holes in them? You know, why is it everyone is, you know, sick and looks malnutrition? And so, and that was just in the village part. But it gave me a sense of empathy, because I learned that there are people in this world that have so much less than I did, to be grateful. It taught me how to be grateful. And it also, at the time, I forget which president it was. It was either Hasina or Khalida Zia, but I remember being like, oh, the prime minister is a woman? I can run for office too. There's a Bengali woman that has, everyone is like parading her around. I can do it too. So it was actually a Bangladeshi politician that inspired me to be able to run for office, because I saw myself in a position of power, because Bangladesh showed me that. Bangladesh has been one of the few countries that first elected a woman as their prime minister. So I am very fond of Bangladesh. You know, it is a part of who I am, and I try to go back as much as I can. The last time I was there, I was 19, and I couch surfed it. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but I like went across all of Bangladesh and toured all across the country to learn more about my culture. As far as following Bangladesh politics, I have not been 100% following it, but I know that, you know, things are, you know, modernizing and have rapidly modernized in the last decade. And I want to go back as soon as I can. My dad's Kalathabon is actually Dipomoni. She's the education minister there. So I know my parents follow the Bangladesh politics a lot more closely than I do, but I need to do a better job on that.
Thanks.
So this is the last question from this panel, and there are a few more questions from the audience that after this question that Mahmoud Hassan will ask you, and he's collecting them as we speak. So I know you have joined our group about a couple of weeks ago, and you know, this is the first time in my observation that our community is trying to come together on the eve of a consequential presidential election. So I would like to know, what are your observations or comments on the energy and enthusiasm and political awareness and activism that are expressed day in, day out in our Facebook group?
So I think it's very inspiring to see how excited our community is about getting involved. As you mentioned earlier, less than 50% of the Bangladeshi community gets involved in the electoral process. But I think for once in our lifetime, I would say one of the first times in our lifetime, we are seeing an energy that hasn't existed before, because we now understand the consequences, right? The consequences of not having a president that understands our day-to-day struggles. Currently, we have a president and administration who sees us as not as an opportunity, but as a problem, right? And every single policy coming out of that administration has been a direct attack against our community, our day-to-day struggles, against working people. And it's so important that we have a voice that does not continue to marginalize us, but uplifts us. And so I'm excited about the amount of Bangladeshi energy that around the country in this Facebook group. I think it's wonderful that you guys are hosting these GOTV events and having participation in them, and I think it's and in lieu of not being able to see each other in person, because I know how, we like to do the big dawats and, and have people speak. But I told my mother that I was going to show her this Facebook later on. And so she's really excited. And she's going to spread it around too. So look, I think, for folks that are by the sidelines, get involved. This is our time. We can make a difference.
Thank you, appreciate it. So Mahmoud, please, if you have.
Yeah, I have a few questions from the audience, from the viewers. Let me start with the first one. Came from one of our moderators, Ibrahim Faisal from Arizona. His question was, as a minority, what were the obstacles you faced and maybe still facing getting into politics from both our community and from other communities, and how you overcame them?
Ibrahim, thank you for that question. It's a good one. It's a great one. I will say that when you're a minority and you're not already heavily represented, you have to work 10 times as harder. It's a lot of kosto, okay? So because there's a saying that you can't be what you can't see. So for a lot of people, like a Bengali woman, a young Bengali woman running for office, this was even a possibility. But in order for a possibility to exist, you have to create it, because if you don't create it, it will never happen. Okay. And as I just worked really, really hard. I am not an independently wealthy person. Congress, I'll talk about Congress, because that's what I ran for. 50% of Congress is over 50% are millionaires. Less than 25% are women. Less than 10% are women of color. Only 22% of Congress are people of color. So we need to have more representation. And, it took, I would say, almost a year for people to, look at my candidacy and be like, wow, she's actually, taking her platform and her campaign to a national level, and it's catching fire. And I created something where at the end of it, no one was like, oh, well, she's not gonna do well at all because of her last name. Or the thing is, you shift the conversation. In the beginning, it was, her name is Nabilah Islam. She's 29. She's a young woman of color. It won't work. And then when you show them that, your campaign actually has that excitement and energy, the conversation shifts is, oh, maybe she's going to do it. Maybe I think this could happen. And that was, it didn't happen this time. But I think that the showing folks that the possibility could actually happen was a huge thing. And you just have to work really hard. And if you run for office, I'll help you.
Okay, second question. I don't know if it's a question or just an inquiry from Najmun Nahar. She mentioned you have a bright future, though, Nabilah. Is there a way to reach out to democratic leadership for a message for the November 3 elections?
Well, thank you for saying I have a bright future. I appreciate that. As far as sending a message to the leadership for the November 3rd elections, I think they're watching everything that we're doing right now. My friend works on the Biden campaign, and I sent them a screenshot of this event, and they were so excited that we were organizing this event. And I think the Biden campaign has definitely taken a notice that our community is organizing, and we just need to continue to organize and make sure we get our communities out to vote and send a message at the ballot box.
Thank you. So our third, actually, I have two questions. They're pretty much similar. So I'm gonna tell you both of them.
Sure.
The first one is from, I hope I pronounce it right. If I don't, I apologize. Sibgat Chaudhary from Massachusetts. And he asked, how do we increase voter turnout? And the second one from Aisha Murshid from Massachusetts. How can we motivate Biden supporters to go to the booth? How can we these are the two questions. They're very
Okay.
simple.
So I would say there's a couple of ways. I will suggest two things. So we definitely have to increase turnout everywhere. And you can go online and find out, there's phone banks. You can phone bank or text people to get out the vote. And I also think if you want to work on motivating Bangladeshis to go vote, it's called relational canvassing. Literally take your phone, go through it and ask people, have you voted yet? And if they haven't, help them with the process. Are you registered? Have you turned in your absentee ballot? Vote shaming also works as well, where you're like, my whole family voted, did you vote? And it will, people will be kind of like, oh, well, and you just push them. You like get involved. You have to do this for your kids, do this for their generation, do this for yourself. We need, our voices need to be heard. So I would suggest going online, finding out local text banks and phone banks, and then also just, in your family. I'm sure in your family, you could probably find, 10, 20 people to go vote. And when I was running, all my cousins, those are all of those are votes.
Okay, thank you. We have some more questions, so I want to make it quick. I have to take these two. First one from, I think, is from one of our admins, Shahidul Mannan Ratan. He had, I think, two questions. What's your perspective on Black Lives Matter? What do you say to people who counter with All Lives Matter or Blue Lives Matter? And the second question is, do you think sometimes progressives focus too much on social justice and ignore economy, jobs, etc.?
So the Black Lives Matter movement, BLM movement, is incredibly important. We see how much police brutality has been excessive since the beginning of this country's inception. The Black community has been marginalized over and over again through various systemic racist policies. And so for folks that say, all lives matter and blue lives matter, all lives will matter when Black lives matter, okay? And so that's what I tell people, that we need to work on uplifting our Black brothers and sisters and march with them and and fight with them. And because we stand on their shoulders, and the African American community fought for civil rights that we today benefit from. And so we owe them so much, and we need to continue to fight with them. As far as progressives focusing on social justice issues and ignoring economic issues, I think they go hand in hand. We need to, fight for racial justice, and systemic racism isn't just about how racism affects you racism affects you on a daily basis when it comes to jobs, when it comes to housing discrimination, when it comes to education. It's so laced in everything from that affects every part of our lives. And so I think when you tackle social justice, you're also tackling economic justice as well. They're both interdependent on each other. For folks that only focus on economic justice, I don't think they are giving the due diligence that social justice should have. And so I think you can fight for both things at the same time.
Thank you. The next question is from Biplab Ghosh, another of our admins. Just like any other immigrant community, Bangladeshi immigrants are not that invested into Green New Deal. Please talk about it, how to make a push for this among us, especially among the middle-aged and older generation Bangladeshis.
Sure. So I personally support a Green New Deal. I know the Biden camp has come out with some, very progressive positioning around how they're going to fight the climate crisis. And so as we need to tackle our problems with the same the solutions. Well, let me rephrase that. The magnitude of our solutions need to match the magnitude of our problems. And so it's no longer climate change. We're in a climate crisis. We need to achieve net zero emissions as soon as possible. We need to make sure that the communities that are being hit the hardest are frontline communities. It's Black and brown people, it's working people that are going to be hit the hardest from this climate crisis. Whether it's the fact that, you know, the polluters, the factories are positioned around our communities and they're producing around us, and because of that, we don't have clean air, we don't have clean water. It's also because it affects us double because jobs. You know, we need to make sure that our communities are able to living, have good paying jobs, and a Green New Deal will address that. It will include a federal jobs guarantee that will include a living wage and make sure that every person, if they want it, can have a good paying job in this country. And if you enact a Green New Deal, it will energize and rehabilitate our infrastructure and tackle the environmental crisis with the boldness that it deserves.
Thank you. And I think this is the last question from one of our moderators, Tuhin Mahmood. Authenticity is so important for any job. What were the obstacles you faced projecting your values while promoting your candidacy, and how did you overcome that?
Can you repeat the question one more time? I want to make sure I get it right.
Authenticity is so important for any job. What were the obstacles you faced projecting your values while promoting your candidacy, and how did you overcome that?
So, yes, I think that when you run for office or any position, you feel like you're boxed in to be a certain way, that this is the only electable positions that you can have, because this is what, how do I explain this? So when I ran for office, you know, I was taught that you couldn't be too loud, okay? You couldn't, your progressives, the policies that I was advocating for couldn't be too progressive. And I argued that the reason that we lose elections is because we don't lean into ourselves. We don't fully embrace who we are, because when we do that, that's when people get inspired. That's when they get off the couch and go vote, because they finally see themselves in a candidate, or they're inspired that a candidate isn't afraid to speak up and speak truth to power. And I always tell people, look, if you double down on your base Democrats and work on expanding the electorate within our own party instead of trying to campaign to, you know, get Republicans to vote for you, you can be a bold progressive champion and inspire people to go vote. You can be your authentic self, and you don't have to water yourself down. You know, in the beginning, you'll feel a lot of pressure to, fit a mold. Don't fit the mold. Be yourself. Be your authentic self. And because there's a lot of power in vulnerability. And I think when you're authentic, you are vulnerable. But that's a beautiful thing. And I think a lot of people are inspired by that.
Thank you so much for being so patient and answering all the questions. I now hand the mic over to Nasiba Mannan for the closing statement.
Mm-hmm. So that ends today's GOTV event with Nabilah Islam. Nabilah, thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure talking to you today, and best of luck with all your future endeavors. And say hi to your mom from us. She raised a very strong daughter, and we wish you best of luck. I'm sure you'll get back in Congress, and we'll like to work with you in future as well. And thank you to our audience. Please check out our events page. We have a lot of events coming up. We have an event with Andrew Yang next week. Then two of our own, Donna Imam, who's running for Congress in Texas, and another one, Nina Ahmed, for Auditor General from Pennsylvania. We hope you join us. Thank you and good night.